Hey guys, tonight we're heading somewhere squishy. You're not in a palace or a battlefield or a chariot race. Nope. You're crouched over a carved stone bench, your tunic bunched awkwardly, with the faint stink of olive oil, fish sauce, and something worse curling up your nose. That thing brushing your thigh? Not a rat, probably. It's just a communal sponge on a stick. Used. Damp. And yes, you're expected to use it next. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Drop that in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake to stomach cramps, not the polite, warning ones, the angry kind that demand immediate action. Unfortunately, your apartment in this Roman insula doesn't come with plumbing or privacy. So you grab your sandals and trudge downstairs, out the door, across the alley, and into the nearest public latrine. Yes, public. Like 20-seat communal bench with holes in it public. The latrina is surprisingly social. You're greeted by a retired gladiator, a fishmonger, and a small child clutching what may or may not be a dead mouse. Everyone's doing their business, shoulder to shoulder. There's no shame, or at least no time for it when your insides are staging a full revolt. Below the marble seats, a channel of running water gurgles along, part of Rome's Cloaca Maxima, the Great Sewer. It's a marvel of engineering. It's also full of, let's call it content. The sponge on a stick, asterisk tersorium asterisk, is resting in a vinegar water bucket at the end of the row. You're supposed to swish it, wipe with it, rinse it, and leave it. Shared tools. No exceptions. Historians still argue whether the vinegar mix was actually disinfecting or just wishful thinking. Either way, it stings more than you'd like to admit. There's no toilet paper, no hand soap. You're meant to use the sponge, wipe your hands on your tunic or a nearby wall, and head back out into the world. You're not even sure what part of your outfit is safe to touch anymore. The floor is slick, the stone is cold, and if you drop your tunicum, it's not coming back the same. Now, here's the quirky part. Romans thought sitting down was actually more hygienic than squatting. Why? Because squatting supposedly caused hemorrhoids, which they believed were caused by trapped bile and imbalanced humors. Which leads us to the one guy muttering on the bench beside you. He's doing deep breath exercises and holding a warm rock to his stomach. He says it balances the wind. You don't ask follow-up questions. Oh, and this isn't just for locals. Visitors to Rome often found public latrines downright impressive. Decorated mosaics, running water, even wall carvings reminding you which gods to thank for smooth passage. Which, let's be honest, is probably the first time you've ever considered praying about that. And yes, they had gods for this. Cloacina, the goddess of the sewer, was often invoked during these moments of distress. As were Stercucius, yes, the dung god, and Febris, who watched over fevers and chills, which, let's face it, are often involved in the same situation. Some Romans brought their own sponges. The wealthy even had scented cloths or attendants to assist them. Think of it like the world's worst luxury spa. Meanwhile, your stomach clenches again, and you realize this is only day one. You still got to figure out what caused the diarrhea in the first place. Was it the goat cheese? The oysters? The slightly green garum sauce? Maybe it was the water. Roman aqueducts were a marvel. Crystal clear streams flowing from mountains to city fountains, piped into homes, if you were rich. But the lower floors of the tenement buildings? Not so lucky. You refill your amphora from a public spout, where someone's toddler just finished splashing. Now it's bubbling in your gut, like a fermentation vat. Remember, germs don't exist yet. The concept of bacteria won't appear for centuries. So Romans blamed their woes on everything from cold air to angry spirits. There's no Pepto-Bismol, no electrolyte drinks, and no bland rice diets. Your only advice is lie down, pray, and try not to die near the family altar. By the time you stumble back from the latrine, your legs are wobbly, your dignity is frayed, and the tersorium haunts your memory like a soggy ghost. You collapse on your straw mat and hope the worst is over. But this is Rome. It's probably not. You don't get much sleep. Not with your stomach staging a full rebellion and your neighbor 2 floors up pouring chamber pot contents directly onto the street. Again. You hear the splash. You smell the consequences. And suddenly, you're not sure whether you're in a civilization or a controlled decline. You groan, shift, and try to lie still, but the mat under you is straw-stuffed and uneven, and the linen is clinging to your sweat-soaked back. Somewhere in the building, someone's burning incense. Or maybe dried eel bones. Either way, it's not helping. And you haven't even made it to the physician yet. The Roman doctor, or medicus, is usually your second stop, right after asking the neighbor's cousin for a prayer and possibly a beetroot. You've heard he's available at the marketplace near the temple of Asclepius, surrounded by the hopeful and the desperate. So you wrap yourself in a tunic that smells like regret and goat hair, and shuffle down toward his stall. He greets you with a grin that's missing 2 teeth and a confidence you wish were contagious. His table is cluttered with bronze tools, linen rags, and a chicken foot. Possibly for luck. Possibly not. You describe your symptoms. He nods, scratches his beard, and begins listing possible causes. Imbalance of the humors, disturbed digestion from overindulgence, moon alignment issues, or simply too much lettuce. Lettuce, you ask? Yes. Apparently it's known to cool the belly too rapidly. He offers treatment options. Option 1. A mixture of red wine, ground cumin, and boiled fig sap, taken thrice daily while reciting a brief prayer to Apollo. Option 2. A suppository made from crushed lupins and sheep fat, inserted with a bronze applicator that looks far too large. Option 3. Bloodletting. Historians still argue whether Roman medicine was genuinely effective or simply elaborate trial and error with a side of showmanship. Either way, you opt for the wine mixture. It tastes like regret and backyard compost, but you drink it because it's that, or the sheep fat suppository. While you recover from the taste, he recommends a strict diet. Boiled leeks, toasted barley, and whatever you can forage that doesn't smell fermented. You ask if that includes the fish paste sold by the docks. He winces. Only if you wish to revisit the gods again tonight. But don't worry, there's more. He gently suggests a purgative. It's a mix of aloe, salt, and powdered horn, designed to flush the body of toxins. You spend the next 3 hours flushing in a different public latrine than before. This one has more graffiti and fewer gods. By late afternoon, your stomach has quieted to a simmer, and your knees no longer buckle with every step. Victory? Maybe, but don't celebrate yet. Because while diarrhea might be your current nightmare, Rome offers an entire buffet of other diseases that travel through water, contact, and community sponges. Dysentery, typhoid, intestinal worms that historians still debate the size of. Some say harmless, others swear they could braid them. And that's just the start. You remember the tersorium again. The sponge stick, used by dozens, sometimes hundreds a day, washed only when someone remembered, usually in vinegar or salt water. You wonder if the guy before you had the same cramps, or if his were worse. At least the doctor gives you a small amulet on your way out. It's clay, sun-baked, and shaped like a tiny coiled snake. He says it will ward off further intestinal mischief. You decide to keep it close, just in case the fig sap wasn't enough. One last thing before you go. He tells you to avoid anger. Anger curdles the bile, he warns solemnly. And a curdled bile is the enemy of a calm gut. You nod. You thank him. You attempt to smile, but your lips are too dry. Back in your insula, you drink from your amphora again, carefully, slowly, even though you now suspect it may be the root of all your problems. You lie back on your mat, the clay amulet pressed to your chest. Your body aches, your pride has taken a hit, and your breath smells vaguely of medicinal cumin. But for now, no cramps. You drift into a sleep that is uneasy, humid, and punctuated by distant shouting about stolen figs. Welcome to recovery. Roman style. Morning comes without much ceremony. Just a shaft of dusty sunlight slanting through the cracked shutters and a neighbor hawking phlegm into the alleyway like it's a sport. Your stomach grumbles, less violently, but still with enough sass to remind you who's in charge. You sit up slowly, wincing as your spine makes a sound like a snapped twig. Time to face the day. And by face, you mean survive. You shuffle to the basin and splash your face with water that may or may not have come from an aqueduct built by someone's drunk cousin. It smells vaguely of copper and disappointment. You don't drink it, obviously. Well, not anymore. You learned your lesson, again. Now it's time to go find breakfast. You pass a street vendor selling honey dates and rough barley bread. Tempting, but dates are laxatives, and your gut is still operating on a hair trigger. You opt for the bread, though it's so dense you're pretty sure it could be used as a weapon. It sits in your mouth like clay and takes 3 swigs of thin goat's milk to choke it down. Then you remember, today is the public bath day. Now, this may sound relaxing. The steamy air, the massage, the pools, it's all very spa-like, until you remember the hygiene standards, or lack thereof. You make your way to the thermi, the public bathhouse, which is buzzing with activity. Naked men argue about politics, merchants shout about fish, and someone is already playing a reed flute in the changing room. The floor is damp with a slickness you don't trust. You avoid eye contact and pick your way across the mosaic tiles to the latrine before your soak. This latrine is slightly nicer than the one in your insula. By nicer, we mean the seats are less splintery and there's a slight breeze coming from somewhere. You do your business. Try not to dwell on the fact that the communal sponge on a stick rests in a basin that hasn't been cleaned since Augustus was in diapers. Historians still argue whether the tersorium was shared by everyone or if the wealthy carried their own. Some suggest that attendants might have maintained them more regularly in upper-class bathhouses. But based on the smell, you're definitely in the working man's wing. Afterward, you rinse your feet in the cold pool because it's polite and brave the hot room. This is where the real bacterial party happens. The tepidarium is thick with steam and humanity. A man coughs into his elbow. Another is rubbing olive oil over his chest with such vigor you wonder if he's trying to become soup. You find a bench near the edge and do your best to appear serene, though your stomach has started tap dancing again. You know what's coming next? The strigil scrape. A wiry man with more moles than fingers gestures for you to lean forward. He scrapes the oil, sweat, and God knows what else off your back with a dull bronze crescent. It's oddly satisfying, until you realize that same tool probably scraped 30 other backs this morning. You get one clean cloth. It smells faintly of thyme and mildew. You wipe yourself down and leave the baths slightly more relaxed and slightly more paranoid. Your skin glows. Your dignity, less so. Back on the street, you run into a friend who tells you of a new miracle cure sold by a Greek named Pylades. Apparently, it's made of aged honey, dried figs, and a hint of lead. Yes, lead. You politely decline, and he shrugs, pops one in his mouth, and says, tastes like victory. You head home, dodging carts, stray dogs, and a child peeing openly into the gutter. That's when it hits you, the belly gurgle. The ominous, pre-battle murmur of something wicked returning to your intestines. You quicken your pace. You reach your door. You fumble the latch. You barely make it to the chamber pot. Your neighbor, who clearly has no boundaries, yells through the wall, still cursed. You grunt in response. She cackles like she's been waiting for that answer. You wipe your brow, trembling slightly. You had one figure, just one. You thought it was safe. But the Roman digestive system does not forgive. It does not forget. You light a small charcoal burner with mint, leaves to try to mask the smell. It doesn't work. Now it just smells like mini disaster. Later, as you lie back on your mat, weak but alive, you think about how much energy you've spent just managing your gut. Your entire day planned around bowel stability. And to think, some historians believe Romans were proud of their advanced sanitation. Others argue the system was never meant for total hygiene, just crowd management. Keep the waste moving out of the city fast enough, and maybe people won't ask too many questions about what's upstream. You clutch your lucky snake amulet and whisper a little apology to your intestines. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Or maybe tomorrow you'll try the sheep fat suppository. Desperation has a way of lowering your standards. You're not sure what wakes you. Maybe it's the chicken crowing 2 hours too early or the distant clank of amphory in the alleyway. But as you blink into the grainy morning light, one thing is certain. Your stomach has declared a ceasefire. Tentative peace. A ceasefire with conditions. You lie still, daring not to move too quickly. The gods have given you a reprieve, and you're not about to insult them by leaping out of bed like some hero from Fresco. Today, you're headed to the medicus. No, not because you're dying. Yet. But because your friend, the same one who proudly ate the lead fig, insists you see a man in the Subura who works miracles with stomachs. This, of course, is the same friend who thought a poultice of boiled mouse could fix his toothache. Still, you're desperate. You walk with care through the twisting alleys, passing houses with laundry fluttering like surrender flags. Children chase each other, half-naked, cackling. A dog rummages through a pile of rotting vegetables with the focus of a scholar. And overhead, somewhere, someone is yelling about stolen lentils. The medicus operates from a shaded stall beneath a crumbling arch. He looks like someone's ancient uncle who's been dipped in fennel tea. His robes are stained, his hands bony, and his smile only half sincere. But he does have jars. So many jars. Some filled with powders, others with floating things that may have once been lizards, or possibly fingers. Stomach demons? He asks, tilting his head. You nod. Close enough. He clucks softly and begins mixing something with alarming speed. You recognize honey, cumin, ground charcoal, and something he doesn't label but smells suspiciously like fish sauce left in the sun. He calls it a curative elixir. You call a dare. You pay him with 2 bronze coins and a wax token for future services. He insists you drink it there, and then, watching like a proud parent. It's thick. It's sour. It might be alive, but you swallow. And now we wait. Back outside, the city's rhythm thuds on. You wander through the forum, hoping movement might help your body decide what to do with the concoction. Nearby, a priest sacrifices a chicken and examines the liver, searching for omens. A few feet away, a slave sells perfume from crushed rose petals and vinegar. Rome is nothing if not contradictory, sacred and stinky, divine and diarrheic. You pause at a fountain. It's fed by one of the aqueducts, probably Aqua Claudia. Or is it Marcia? Historians still argue whether certain neighborhood fountains were fed by the same lines or mixed downstream. Either way, you don't drink it. You're not that foolish. Instead, you sit on the edge and listen. A man nearby complains about a stomach worm the size of a garter snake. Someone else swears their cousin's gut healed after eating only pine bark for a week. Another insists the key is bathing in cold vinegar every morning and chanting to Apollo. You begin to realize that ancient Romans weren't so much healthy as creative. At midday, you feel strange. Not worse. Not better. Just strange. Like your organs have collectively decided to reevaluate their contracts. You head home, slower now, unsure what your internal negotiations will conclude. When you reach your door, there's a small pouch waiting, left by your neighbor. Inside, dried juniper berries and a note scrawled on wax tablet. Boil these. Trust me. You boil them. You trust. Because, frankly, you've tried everything else. The tea smells sharp and piney. You sip carefully, and this time something shifts. Not a dramatic purge. Not immediate regret. Just warmth. Relief. Of course, you've been here before. Temporary calm. The eye of the storm. But for now, it feels like a win. In ancient Rome, a day without bathroom drama is a luxury. You lie back on your mat, cradle your slowly cooperating stomach, and whisper thanks to the gods, the medicus, your nosy neighbor, even the mice who weren't boiled this time. You drift into a nap, and for the first time in days, it's dreamless. Except for one vague image, a giant sponge on a stick chasing you through the forum, yelling, "You forgot to rinse me." You wake with a smile. You might survive another day after all. You wake up to silence, which is suspicious in itself. No bubbling guts. No desperate mid-sprint to the latrine. Could it be a normal day? Let's not tempt Fortuna. You rise slowly, like someone testing the floor of a suspicious boat. Your stomach murmurs, but not ominously, just that soft gurgle of a digestive system cautiously rejoining society. You step outside to the sunlight filtering through laundry and pigeons, and it feels almost peaceful. Time for breakfast? You grab a stale crust of bread soaked in watered-down wine. That's the Roman version of smoothie. It's easy on the stomach and hard on the soul. It tastes like regret and old barrels. Then you remember you've been invited to a private bathhouse across town. Your wealthy cousin's idea of generosity. You're supposed to relax, which in Roman terms usually means getting aggressively scraped, pummeled, and yelled at by men with olive oil and strong opinions. So you walk cautiously, because the city is never truly sanitary. You pass a mule relieving itself right onto the road. Nearby, a man empties a chamber pot from a second-floor window. You dodge just in time. That's not water falling from the sky, friend. Historians still argue whether daily sanitation efforts in Roman cities actually reduced disease or just shifted it around. There were laws against dumping waste in the streets. But let's be real, enforcement was, let's say, selective. You reach the bathhouse. It's more luxurious than expected. Heated floors, scented oils, carved marble benches. And behind it all, the giant furnace, the hypocaust system pumping hot air beneath the floors. Brilliant engineering. Also the reason half of Rome smells like sweaty limestone. You undress. Public nudity isn't taboo here. Everyone's got body hair, a sunburned back, and something weird happening with their toenails. You blend right in. First, a dip in the tepidarium. Warm, soothing, full of echoes and steam. You sit on the edge of a bench, water swirling gently around your ankles. The guy next to you is trimming his armpit hair with a seashell. Another is rubbing his chest with salt and looking disturbingly pleased. Time for the strigil. The attendant approaches, a man built like a column and frowning like it's personal. He slathers you in oil, sesame, maybe, and begins scraping. It's like being exfoliated by an annoyed goose. You try to relax. After all, Romans believed this ritual was as much medical as hygienic. Oil trapped impurities, they said. Scraping removed them. Did it actually work? Well, historians still debate that. Some say it just redistributed grime. Others argue it helped dislodge bacteria and sweat. Either way, it was satisfying in that please stop or love it kind of way. Then, of course, comes the latrina. Yes, the public toilet. It's not glamorous, but it's important. You sit shoulder to shoulder with strangers, thighs touching on a long marble bench with holes. Beneath you, a gently flowing water channel. In front of you, a shared sponge on a stick in a vinegar bucket. One stick, multiple users. Let that sink in. You pretend to study the wall graffiti. Some of it surprisingly poetic. Lucia was here, and she stole my figs. The man beside you discusses politics with the other side. Someone's laughing 2 seats down. It's oddly social and oddly smelly. You do your business, rinse the sponge like you mean it, and wash your hands thoroughly. This part is crucial. Soap isn't common, but ashes, salt, and vinegar do the trick. Romans weren't entirely clueless. They just had different limits for gross. Back in the main room, you towel off, wrap your tunic again, and emerge blinking into the sunlight. It's afternoon now. Time for lunch. You find a thermopolium, a Roman fast food stall, and order something bland. Lentil mush, maybe. You're not risking sausage yet. Not after what happened last time. You eat standing, watching flies battle over a melon rind. A stray cat sneezes and wanders off. A man sidles up beside you and whispers, "You want the real cure for stomach demons?" Oh no. He hands you a pouch of dried something. Boiled locust wing. Works every time. You nod politely, pocket it, and promise yourself you'll never open it. Ever. As the sun lowers over tiled rooftops, you head home, still cautiously optimistic. Your belly hasn't declared war again. Your head feels clear. Even your sandals are dry. This must be what winning feels like in ancient Rome. You lie back on your mat, stare at the rafters, and allow yourself the smallest smile. Today, nobody threw up on your shoes. Progress. The night is cooler now, and as you curl up on your woven mat, you're struck by something peculiar. You feel fine, which is suspect. In ancient Rome, feeling fine is often the first sign that something's about to go catastrophically wrong. Still, sleep comes quickly, but your dreams are bizarre. Plague masks, serpents, and a man arguing with cabbage. You wake before dawn, groggy and parched, with an ominous gurgle in your stomach. And there it is, the daily gamble begins again. You clutch your belly and shuffle to the nearest latrine, only to find it's already full, both in people and, let's say, content. A young boy scrubs the edge with vinegar while whistling cheerfully. You hate him, so you do what desperate Romans often did. You find a quiet alley, look both ways, and squat over a storm drain. Dignity is a luxury now. Historians still argue whether Romans were truly indifferent to sanitation or simply resigned to it. There's evidence of surprisingly modern engineering, covered sewers, running water, flushing mechanisms, but also an overwhelming disregard for waste management in lower neighborhoods. It's a patchwork of brilliance and biohazard. You rejoin the city's rhythm, hunched and queasy. The marketplace is already bustling. Someone selling figs. Someone else is loudly vomiting behind a fish stall. The smell is a violent mix of sea brine, sheep sweat, and fermenting cabbage. An herbalist catches your eye. You shuffle over, clutching your gut like a precious relic. She looks you up and down and offers a dried concoction that smells like goat fur and peppermint. You chew, instantly regret it. She nods solemnly. You'll feel worse before you feel better. You definitely feel worse. You stumble to a shady wall and slide down, dizzy. A man nearby is lecturing a group of children about humors. He pokes at a diagram. Black bile, yellow bile, blood, and phlegm. Everything comes back to humors. According to Galenic theory, your diarrhea could mean excess cold and wet, too much phlegm, or not enough fire. So the solution might be heat, a mustard plaster, a hot brick to the belly, or consuming wine boiled with pepper and honey. You're offered one of these steaming mugs. You sip. It tastes like burning. In regret, your cousin appears and offers to take you to a medicus, a trained Roman physician. You're skeptical, but also desperate. You're led to a small room behind a linen shop, where the medicus greets you while applying leeches to another man's armpit. He waves you onto a wooden bench and begins his diagnosis by inspecting your urine in a clear flask. He swirls it like wine. Sniffs. Ah, he says, too much melancholy. You consider explaining that your real issue is liquid betrayal from your colon, but he's already assembling a poultice. You get slathered in goose fat mixed with charcoal and lavender, then bandaged tightly, like a ham. He prescribes a strict diet, only boiled barley, weak wine, and a single date. You thank him, hand over a small coin, and shuffle home like a wrapped mummy. Romans weren't entirely misguided in their medical practices. Some of their herbal remedies, like mint, coriander, or fennel, do have mild anti-inflammatory or antimicrobial effects. But most treatments were either symbolic or guesswork dressed in Latin. You lie down again, everything gurgling. You smell like cooked bird, but at least you've done something. Maybe this time, your intestines will respect your effort. Then, too soon, it's back to the latrine. This time, you bring your own sponge. One man nods approvingly. Another offers you a joke about figs that you don't understand, but laugh at anyway. Because here, bonding over bowel movements is oddly comforting. You realize, in that moment, that ancient Rome may have had aqueducts and mosaics and clever sewer systems, but when it comes to disease and diarrhea, no one truly had it figured out. It was a daily battle of trial, error, and praying to a god who specialized in entrails. And you're still here. Barely. By mid-morning, your body is a battlefield, your stomach staging an intermittent rebellion that catches you off guard every time you start to feel safe. You try not to stray too far from the public latrines, because once the rumble begins, it's a countdown measured in panicked breaths. You pass a bakery, fresh loaves steaming in the sun. A child dips one in oil and devours it with the joy of someone who has never known intestinal regret. You glare at him like a cursed oracle. You've heard tales of healers in the countryside who know ancient cures, strange, half-pagan women who mix hawthorn with donkey milk, or burn rosemary with crushed beetle to chase away ill winds. Some swear by charms, small copper amulets shaped like bowels. You wonder if yours is broken enough to warrant a talisman. A man in a crimson tunic catches you eyeing a herbal stall and strikes up a conversation. He speaks with the tone of someone who thinks they're helping. Ah, belly worms, he says knowingly. Common. He leans in closer. You must catch a lizard at dawn, boil it in goat urine, and drink it before sunset. Work for my nephew. You do not ask about the nephew. Historians still argue whether many of these so-called folk cures were superstition, desperate placebo, or actually rooted in long-forgotten science. Some plants, like wormwood, do have antiparasitic properties. Others, like the lizard urine cocktail, probably just stories passed down from the delirious. But let's be fair, Rome had no germ theory, no microscopes, no understanding of fecal-oral transmission. The idea that invisible particles in water could be killing people was, frankly, too sci-fi. So everything became a metaphor. Humors, omens, curses, and climate. You finally decide to visit the baths. If you're going to suffer, you might as well suffer clean. Inside, steam curls around you like ghosts with damp towels. The tepidarium is humid, the marble floors slippery. You ease into the warm pool, hoping heat will help settle your guts, or at least disguise the groaning sounds. Roman baths were not just about cleanliness. They were social hubs, places to gossip, cut deals, recite poetry, or argue about chariot racing while sweating in communal misery. But they were also, well, kind of gross. You glance at the water. It's murky. A man sneezes in the corner. Someone else is trimming a callus with a bronze blade. You're floating in what might be the oldest soup in history. And you paid for this. You move to the caldarium, the hottest room, where your pores open wide and your body tries to sweat out evil like a demon. Some physicians believed heat purged bad humors. You just feel dizzy. A muscular man offers to scrape your skin with a strigil, a curved blade meant to remove oil and filth. You nod. As he works, he hums. You try to relax. Your stomach disagrees. You excuse yourself mid-strigil, slipping past naked merchants and oily senators, back into the fresh air where pigeons coo with mild judgment. Outside, a beggar woman waves a sprig of rue under your nose. Smell it, she croaks. It scares off the belly demons. You pretend to believe her. Honestly, you'll try anything now. That evening, you're invited to a symposium, a small dinner hosted by a minor official. You're too sick to eat, but showing up is politically smart. So you drag yourself there, draped in your cleanest tunic, clutching a stomach that feels full of bees. The room smells like roasted lamb and spiced wine. Laughter echoes off frescoed walls. A woman plucks a lyre. Someone passes you a plate. You decline, politely, twice. Eventually, you're forced to nibble. Bread soaked in garum, a fermented fish sauce as beloved by Romans as it is feared by your bowels. You chew slowly, pray silently. So far, so good. A philosopher beside you launches into a long theory about bile ratios and why Saturn makes some men more prone to night evacuations. You nod, eyes watering. Historians note that Roman elite were obsessed with digestive metaphors. Emperors had food tasters not just for poison, but to observe digestion patterns. Augustus once bragged about his balanced evacuations, which feels like oversharing, even for an emperor. As the evening ends, you make your way home under a sky heavy with stars and indigestion. The city is quieter now. Only a few torches flicker on the walls. A cat darts between shadows. You think about all the things you've tried: vinegar-soaked figs, dried mint, boiled barley, blessed charms, public baths, private prayers. You're a walking apothecary. And still, you are one sneeze away from disaster. Welcome to ancient Rome, where the architecture morning greets you with a new level of betrayal. Your insides feel like they're being rearranged by a bored deity with a mean streak. You wake not to birdsong, but to the gurgling churn of your own digestive system, a sound so alarming you briefly wonder if it's a curse. You stagger upright and mutter a prayer to Cloacina, goddess of the sewer. She's not exactly a popular figure on Roman altars, but today you're in her temple whether you like it or not. You shuffle to the latrine. Again, this time a line. Roman public toilets, asterisk Farica asterisk, are social spaces. Imagine a stone bench with a dozen open holes, no partitions, no privacy, and a polite expectation that you make conversation while doing your business. You find a spot between two elderly men who smell like wine and opinion. One nods at you as he shifts his tunic. Rough morning? He asks. You can only grunt. The sponge on a stick is waiting in the running water trench below. Asterisk tersorium asterisk, they call it. Reused. Communal. A concept so unsettling, it deserves its own horror film. Still, you reach for it with the grim resignation of someone who knows there is no better option. You try not to breathe too deeply. You try not to think about what's been floating in this water. You try not to think about the previous users. Historians still argue whether these sponge sticks were shared between sessions or if wealthier folks carried personal ones. Either way, you vow to invent toilet paper and become a god. After surviving the Foraca, you pass by a medicus, a Roman doctor known more for confidence than results. He's setting leeches on a man's legs. The patient is laughing, which is either a good sign or madness. You approach. My belly, you mutter. The medicus nods sagely. Humors, he says. Too much black bile. Possibly divine punishment. Or cheese. He offers a mixture of crushed pearl, wine, and dried pigeon dung. You decline, politely. Again, there's also treacle, a dark, sticky paste made from about 80 ingredients, including opium, cinnamon, and viper flesh. It's supposed to be a universal cure. It also costs more than your sandals. Instead, he gives you a chalky powder made from burnt bread crust and tells you to mix it with goat's milk. You nod, take it, and wonder how long your stomach will wait before testing it. Back in the market, you pass a man yelling about miracle beans that can stop liquid shame. He's standing next to a donkey with a halo painted on its forehead. You keep walking. You end up at a temple, not for prayer, but because the courtyard has shade and you need to sit before you collapse. A priestess offers you a small clay figure shaped like intestines. Bury it in the north corner of your home, she says. It traps illness. You smile. You might try it. You've done worse. Throughout the city, talk of illness ebbs and flows like gossip on the wind. Someone blames spoiled oysters. Another whispers of poison wells. A vendor claims the aqueducts are haunted. A mother clutches her baby, muttering protection charms. The Romans didn't understand microbes, but they deeply understood fear. When things went wrong, really wrong, they turned to the gods, the stars, their dreams. Every cramp became a message. Every stomach gurgle a potential omen. You walk past a fresco showing Asclepius, the healing god, holding a serpent-wrapped staff. Someone's left him a garland of parsley and a handful of coins. You add one more. Can't hurt. In a shaded courtyard, you overhear a philosopher debating with a baker about the virtues of fasting. Food causes imbalance, the philosopher argues. Illness begins with the tongue. The baker, wiping flour on his tunic, disagrees. No one's ever died for my bread. You consider joining the debate, but a fresh stomach spasm reminds you that philosophy doesn't prevent diarrhea. You retreat to your lodging and collapse onto your bed, a wooden plank with a straw mattress and a thin linen sheet. You sip water, but carefully. The sister might be safe, or it might not. You've heard of people boiling their water with rosemary to make it drinkable. You've also heard of people doing that and dying anyway. The line between remedy and roulette is thin in ancient Rome. Later, you dream. You're floating in a sea of vinegar and honey. Leech-faced men chant poetry. The sponge on a stick grows limbs and waves at you. A donkey offers you a bowl of herbs and winks. You wake up in a cold sweat. Outside, a trumpet signals the 6th hour. You made it through another day. Barely. Congratulations. Now do all again tomorrow. Because in ancient Rome, no one escapes their bowels. Not emperors. Not slaves. Not even you. Especially not you. The day drags on like a heavy wool cloak. Your stomach cramps insistently, a reminder you're far from cured. You trudge toward the balneum, the public baths, hoping that warm water might soothe your insides or at least distract you from your predicament. Plus, it's the best place in Rome to catch gossip, and misery loves company. The baths are a spectacle. Men and women, separately of course, immerse themselves in steaming pools, lounges, and saunas. The air is thick with steam, sweat, and the sharp tang of olive oil. The noise is a mixture of splashes, chatter, and the occasional gruff bark of the balneator, the bath attendant. You find a bench near the tepidarium, a warm room designed to ease aching muscles. The scent of herbs and burnt cedar fills the air, a far cry from your sour stomach. You catch the eye of an older man who nods in sympathy and motions toward a cup of some dark liquid, likely an herbal concoction meant to settle the humors. You accept it cautiously. The Romans were oddly obsessed with balance. They believed illness came from an imbalance of four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Diarrhea? Too much yellow bile, maybe too little phlegm. Or maybe the gods were just messing with you. You sip the bitter brew, trying not to gag. Across the room, a young woman is undergoing a ritual with a priestess. She's clutching a small amulet shaped like a heart entwined with ivy, a charm for digestive protection. You overhear the priestess whispering incantations, her voice barely audible over the clinking of bronze bowls. Interestingly, some Romans used donkey dung as a remedy for stomach troubles, believing its strong, earthy properties could rebalance the body. You can't decide if this is fascinating or utterly horrifying. Historians still argue whether such treatments were placebo, tradition, or outright dangerous. As you shift on the stone bench, a soldier limps in, grimacing. He claims his bouts of dysentery started after a campaign in Gaul. The balneator hands him a poultice made from crushed figs and vinegar to soothe his stomach. You make a mental note to avoid any military campaigns. You overhear a debate about the sewage system, Rome's famed Cloaca Maxima. Some say it's the greatest public health innovation of the ancient world. Others argue it spread disease faster by dumping waste into the Tiber River. You lean toward the latter as you consider your water supply. Later, you watch as a vendor sells garlands woven from rue and lavender, herbs believed to ward off sickness. People buy them eagerly, clutching their purchases like lifelines. The sun begins to dip, and you leave the baths feeling slightly lighter, though the nagging cramps remain. You vow to avoid oysters, wine, and anything that reminds you of that wretched sponge on a stick. As you exit, you pass a small shrine to Apollo, god of healing and disease. You toss in a coin and whisper a quick prayer, not for miracles but for mercy. Because in ancient Rome, surviving diarrhea was less about medicine and more about luck, faith, and an iron stomach. You wake the next morning, hoping the relentless cramps have finally eased. Spoiler, they haven't. Instead, your mouth tastes like dry parchment, and your limbs feel as heavy as a Roman legionnaire's armor after a day's march. Breakfast is out of the question. The only remedy your mind can summon is a visit to the medicus, Rome's equivalent of a doctor, who's more likely to be a learned philosopher than a miracle worker. You trudge through narrow, bustling streets, dodging merchants hawking everything from figs to cheap perfumes masking less pleasant smells. Arriving at the medicus cramped clinic, a small room cluttered with scrolls, clay jars, and odd-looking tools, you're greeted by an elderly man with a beard that looks like it has its own ecosystem. He peers over his spectacles and asks about your symptoms in a voice both calm and weary. You explain your tale of woe, avoiding vivid descriptions that might make him wince. The medicus nods knowingly and rummages through his jars. He pulls out a concoction of honey, vinegar, and crushed myrrh, aromatics believed to soothe the digestive tract and kill off evil spirits. He also offers advice. Avoid cold foods, abstain from wine, ouch, and drink plenty of water infused with mint or rue. You notice a small jar labeled hippopotamus dung powder among his remedies. Curiosity piqued, you ask about it, and he grins knowingly. Apparently, it was a prized but controversial treatment for intestinal issues, thought to absorb toxins. You try not to picture where it came from. Historians still argue whether such exotic remedies were effective or simply symbolic gestures to appease patients and the gods alike. As you sip the bitter potion, the medicus offers a dried fig, meant to stimulate digestion. You suspect he's testing how much misery you can handle. While you're there, a fellow patient limps in, complaining of similar symptoms. He swears by a ritual involving the burning of frankincense and reciting verses from the hymn to Asclepius, the god of healing. The medicus humors him, but clearly prefers his herbal treatments. You leave the clinic feeling only marginally better, but with a new appreciation for the complexity of Roman medicine, which mingled practical knowledge with superstition, philosophy, and a dash of desperation. Outside, you overhear a heated debate about the quality of Rome's water supply, some blaming contaminated aqueduct for recurring outbreaks, others insisting the problem lies with the citizens' lack of hygiene. You realize surviving diarrhea in ancient Rome was a precarious balance between science, belief, and sheer endurance. Back home, you decide to avoid the day's midday sun, retreating to a shady courtyard where the scent of blooming oleander distracts you from your woes. It's not glamorous, but it's survival. You try to rest, but your bowels have other plans, persistent, unforgiving, and noisy enough to keep the entire household awake. The chamber is dim, lit only by a small oil lamp whose flickering flame casts long, uneasy shadows on the rough stone walls. Your mind drifts to the public latrines you visited days ago, the grand communal toilets, social hubs where Romans share gossip alongside their waste. Some say those latrines were breeding grounds for disease. Others argue they were surprisingly hygienic for their time. You remember the sponge on a stick, the infamous tersorium, used to clean after business, a communal cleaning tool soaked in vinegar or salt water. It sounds charming, doesn't it? Sharing a single sponge with dozens of strangers, hoping it's not a microbial time bomb. Some historians still debate if this practice spread infections or if the vinegar-soaked sponge actually kept things relatively clean. Either way, it's hardly the modern wet wipe you wish you had. As you lie back, your body aching and your stomach churning, you recall tales of the goddess Cloacina, protector of Rome's sewers and sanitation. Ancient Romans had a sense of humor about filth, dedicating deities to it. Because, hey, if you must suffer, at least get a patron saint. In the background, the household slaves go about their duties quietly, fetching water, sweeping floors, and occasionally casting sympathetic glances your way. The idea that even in illness, life goes on, merciless and indifferent. Your thoughts are interrupted by a knock at the door. It's the midwife's assistant, bearing a small bundle of herbs wrapped in linen. These include rue for calming spasms and thyme to disinfect. The assistant reminds you of the importance of herbal remedies, some surprisingly effective, others more about faith and ritual. Historians still argue how much ancient Roman treatments relied on actual medicine versus placebo and superstition. But in your current state, you're grateful for anything. You close your eyes, willing the cramps to subside, and try to imagine a life free from this torment, a luxury your ancestors could only dream of. The morning arrives sluggishly, bringing little relief. You shuffle to the wooden basin beside your bed, the cold water shocking your skin but dulling the relentless discomfort for a moment. Outside, the courtyard bustles, merchants setting up stalls, children chasing each other through dust and sun. You recall the physician's words from last night. Stay hydrated, eat bland foods like barley gruel, and avoid the feared humoral imbalance that could worsen your condition. Ancient medicine was a curious mix, balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much bile might explain your relentless diarrhea, or so they say. Interestingly, Romans sometimes used powder mouse brains as medicine for stomach ailments. Yes, mouse brains, an acquired taste to say the least. It sounds like something concocted by a medieval apothecary with a penchant for the grotesque. Scholars still debate the efficacy of such remedies and whether they truly helped or just added to the discomfort. Whatever the case, you trade mouse brains for a clean bathroom any day. As you sip lukewarm water, you notice the household dog eyeing you warily, perhaps sensing your weakness or just hoping for scraps. Even the animals seemed wary of Roman disease. The midwife stops by again, this time bearing a small bundle of linen wrapped around crushed herbs, marjoram and sage for washing. The Romans believed such herbs could ward off evil spirits, which they blamed for many illnesses. It's a curious fusion of medicine and superstition, a thread that runs through much of Roman healthcare. The line between science and faith was often blurred, and you're living proof of that uneasy balance. You realize that surviving disease in ancient Rome was as much about mental endurance as physical strength, a challenge for any poor soul caught in the endless cycle of sickness and care. Evening falls, and the bustling city quiets to a dull murmur, broken only by the occasional clatter of carts or distant laughter from a tavern. You're lying on a rough straw mattress, the faint smell of herbs hanging in the air, thyme, rue, and something stronger like myrrh, offered by your nurse to ease your discomfort. Diarrhea in ancient Rome wasn't just a personal ordeal. It was a public concern, one that could affect armies, markets, and entire neighborhoods. Soldiers were especially vulnerable, often succumbing to illness in the field more than to enemy swords. The Roman military carried remedies and purifying rituals, blending practical medicine with superstition to keep the ranks marching. A curious tidbit: some Romans believed that the sound of a rooster's crow could chase away intestinal demons causing sickness. You almost wish someone would bring a rooster near your bedside right now. Anything for distraction. Historians still debate how effective these ancient treatments were, or whether the placebo effect played a larger role in recovery. It's fascinating to consider how belief and biology intertwined in the healing process. You drift in and out of uneasy sleep, your body racked by cramps and weakness, while distant voices chant prayers to Aesculapius, god of healing. You can't help but feel caught between hope and despair, trapped in a time when illness was both a mystery and a trial. The night stretches on slowly, each breath a reminder of your fragility, the very real threat that disease posed in a world without antibiotics or modern sanitation. Morning light seeps through the small window, casting pale beams on your sweat-soaked sheets. The ache in your belly hasn't lessened, and you know that survival depends on more than just rest. It requires care, remedies, and a bit of luck. Family and friends come and go, bringing food, water, and words of comfort, though many keep their distance, wary of contagion. In ancient Rome, diarrhea was often seen as both a physical ailment and a moral test. The sick were encouraged to cleanse themselves spiritually as well as physically, invoking gods like Salus for health and purification. Household shrines might be lit with incense, and charms worn to ward off evil influences. Here's a quirky detail. Some Romans believed that carrying a dried toad or wearing a rabbit's foot could protect against stomach ailments. You might smirk at the superstition, but desperate times call for desperate charms. Scholars still argue about how much Roman medicine relied on herbal pharmacology versus ritualistic practice, and how these overlapping approaches affected patient outcomes. You lie there, body exhausted but mind alert enough to reflect on the strange mixture of science, faith, and folklore that shaped daily life in this ancient city. Despite the pain and fear, there's a stubborn hope flickering inside you. The hope that someday, sickness will no longer be a death sentence, but a challenge met with knowledge and care. As the day wears on, you slowly gather strength. You survive another 24 hours in a world where diarrhea and disease are common, cruel, and often deadly. And that, dear listener, is a small victory indeed. As the sun sets, the sounds of the bustling Roman city fade into a quieter hum. You feel your breathing slow, your muscles relax just enough to drift towards sleep, though the lingering discomfort reminds you of the fragility of life in this ancient time. Imagine the flickering candlelight casting dancing shadows on the rough walls of your room. Outside, neighbors murmur prayers and light small fires to keep the darkness and disease at bay. Inside, the faint scent of herbs lingers, sage, rosemary, maybe a touch of myrrh, offered by well-meaning hands hoping to ease your suffering. This moment, suspended between wakefulness and rest, is where ancient medicine meets human resilience. It's a pause filled with cautious hope and the quiet bravery of those who lived through hardship without modern comforts. You reflect on the strange blend of remedies, from purgatives to prayers, that shaped the Roman fight against disease. And while the past is distant, the human struggle to survive remains profoundly familiar. So, as you settle deeper into your bed, let the rhythm of ancient Rome's heartbeat lull you. Remember, each breath is a victory, each moment of peace a treasure. Sleep now, gently, with the knowledge that history's hardships are not so far removed from our own, and that survival, then and now, is often about patience, care, and a flicker of hope. Sweet dreams.